It was dark that night. The sky was black, like ink spilled over parchment. I kept jogging, enjoying the brisk cold on my sweating face. I had been running ever since I was a child, a star on my high school track team. Headphones crooned an upbeat oldies melody into my ears. As I ran past an old cemetery, the graves jutting like rotting, crooked teeth, something latched onto my leg, holding onto it like a vice. I gasped, the halting momentum causing me to sprawl to the ground. I rolled onto my back, frantically scanning the gloom to get a look at my attacker. I pulled my headphones out of my ears. Nothing. The wind picked up, whistling eerily through the tombstones. I was about to jump up and resume my run home, my mind coming to the conclusion my leg had gotten caught in or tangled in something. Looking back, it sounds lame, but it's amazing how far our minds will go to rationalize the weirdness all around us. I froze as a hooded figure came into view. I noticed I had been jogging close to the cemetery gates, and he must have been waiting behind them. A sick feeling came over me as I realized I took the same route every night. How long had this creep been stalking me out? I promptly got to my feet and I began to run, but this freak was fast. He caught up with me, swiftly got me into a chokehold and handcuffed me. I struggled, but it was like I was being held by the Hulk. "Where are you taking me?" I whimpered. The figure did not answer. He picked me up like I was a child and he walked into the cemetery. His cloak pressed up against my nose, smelling of must and incense. "A prayer to the elemental," he murmured. He began to chant. Rain began to patter on us, but it was no rain. It clung to my skin. I recognized the tangy, chlorine scent. It was semen. The old decrepit tombstones whirled past us as we came to an old, crumbling mausoleum located in the back of the graveyard. He entered through the front door that protested loudly with a moan, and he paused at the back of the room, pressing a panel that slid back, revealing a set of ancient stone steps. When we reached the bottom, my eyes watered at the blaze of hundreds of candles. A group of men in hooded black cloaks awaited us. A pentagram drawn in chalk was at the center of the room, with 4 manacles lined to the side of it. My heart began to speed up. Tears started to form at the corners of my eyes as the man carrying me walked with purpose to the pentagram. My mind began to race. I was going to die, used in some sick satanic ritual. I had a spouse, a newborn baby. Shit, I was working harder on my nightly runs just to stay in shape. I sent a silent prayer above to whoever would listen to me to live through this. The hooded man gently eased me into the pentagram and began removing all my clothes. And then he proceeded to manacle my 4 limbs. I noticed a few strands of gray hair on his head in the candlelight. He left me alone in the circle and he joined the other men, and they began chanting. It was rhythmic, archaic. My eyes drooped and the room felt warm. I almost felt peaceful, like being held in my mother's arms. My eyes jerked open just as another hooded man entered the room. Simultaneously, all the men prostrated themselves on the floor, dipping their heads in reverence. The chanting ceased and the terror I felt resumed. "Please, just let me go," I pleaded. I could not make out much of the man's features as he strode towards me, but I could tell that he was pleased. He turned to the man who had taken me into the graveyard. "You did good, Jones." The man walked over to me, and he looked at me with blazing green eyes. "Isabella, you conceived your husband's child last night. A second egg is waiting. For me." It is your fate to deliver twins. In rare cases, a woman can carry 2 children with 2 separate fathers. And that is why I chose you, Isabella. I have foreseen this. I do not want you to attempt to get rid of my child. It will make me very angry and there will be repercussions. Think of your husband, your baby girl at home. This will be the child of a god. Be proud. I screamed in protest, yanking at my chains defiantly as he approached. After the vile deed was done, and I lied there like an empty shell, the strange man turned to me, as if in an afterthought. Oh, I must mention there is a chance you may die in childbirth or soon after. It has happened to the mothers of my other children. But if you are the one, Isabella, you will live to be the mother of a royal line. And with that, he strode into the wall. You heard me right. He walked through the stone wall. The room whirled like a cyclone to my exhausted eyes. The man with the gray hair who had abducted me approached with a syringe, and after that, there was nothing but a black abyss. I came to on the sidewalk, fully clothed. The rest was a blur as I found my cell phone still intact in my pocket and I was taken to the hospital. My husband Gary rushed into the hospital room, his brown hair disheveled, his blue eyes concerned. He gripped my hand in his, studying my face intently. I told him everything except the part where he had walked through the wall, and how he had predicted I was pregnant. It was the ravings of a madman and I had hallucinated, the result of my stress. A month later, I was retching into the toilet. As I heaved miserably, Gary came in and put a comforting hand on my shoulder. When the pregnancy test came back positive, we sat down together and he said it was a possibility the baby was his, and he urged me to keep it. That madman had told me I was carrying my husband's child. I could not possibly go through with an abortion. I looked fondly at Arabella in her swing, gurgling happily, her chubby little fingers waving in the air. Yes, I would keep our child. The scheduled ultrasound came upon us 6 weeks after the incident. The technician smiled as the wand glided over my belly, which was covered in jelly. Congratulations, Isabella. It looks like you are having twins. Gary smiled proudly and he kissed me on the forehead. A deep pit of terror overwhelmed me. Black spots swam in the corners of my vision, threatening unconsciousness. The words in the graveyard came back to me. It is your fate to deliver twins. In rare cases, a woman can carry 2 children with 2 separate fathers. You alright, Izzy? You look pale. Izzy was his cute little nickname for me. With the sickening prophecy swirling in my mind, I gulped and I mustered up a weak, reassuring smile at my husband. He was so supportive. I couldn't ask for a better spouse. Can I have a paternity test, please? I asked the astonished technician. After a moment of awkward silence, she spoke. You can't have a paternity test. Not until they're born. If it was a single fetus, yes, but it is impossible with twins. Words cannot express how helpless that made me feel. I wanted my husband's child, but I felt hatred for the intrusion, the abomination growing beside it. The months passed sluggishly, and it was absolute torture. It was revealed one twin was a boy, and the other was a girl. The only motivation I had was that both twins were healthy, which meant that the child I wanted was flourishing. My worst nightmare was that sick thing inside of me consuming my husband's child, which does happen in many cases of twins. We were lying in bed at night when I was awoken, feeling the twisting, cramping pain so familiar to me which occurred with Arabella. I was in labor. I reached out a hand and I shook my husband frantically. Gary, it's happening." He hopped out of bed like it was on fire and he grabbed my suitcase. He helped me out of bed and he walked, and I waddled to the car. After helping me, we drove our way to the hospital. I didn't notice the car tailing us at first. "The asshole has his high beams on," Gary grumbled. We lived far out in the countryside and I was getting panicked. My contractions continued sporadically. My hand gripped my swollen belly in desperation. The truck rammed into us and I shrieked, tears forming in my eyes. We had a Volkswagen Jetta and we were no match for the large pickup truck. My husband sped up, but it rammed into us again, pushing us into the embankment. We were trapped. I screamed, frantically getting out of the car, looking for any houses or passerby. Nothing. The road was empty, desolate. I looked into the car, and Gary appeared to be unconscious. The doors to the pickup opened. 2 hooded figures came out, sending me into a major PTSD episode. My terror was indescribable. Here I was, the most helpless a woman can be, in labor with my husband unconscious. While 2 hooded men approached, they grabbed me and put me into the pickup, flanking me on both sides. Full-fledged tears came on, streaming down my face as my belly convulsed. "Just please, take me to the hospital," I cried. "You do not need the hospital, Isabella. You are giving birth to a god." The truck pulled alongside a familiar place, a place I still see in my nightmares, the cemetery. I struggled as they guided me through the rusty, decrepit gates, past the jutting, weathered graves, and into the rotting mausoleum. How could I give birth amongst so much death? They carefully guided me down the stone steps, back to the pentagram of my nightmares. The police had investigated this place and they had found nothing. No candles, manacles, or a pentagram. But it was all back in place. Blazing candles illuminating the gloom. Pentagram in place. The crowd of hooded men in black ceremonial garb awaited us. The 2 men led me into the room. I was nearly doubled over in pain at this point. They undressed me and then they fastened me into those horrific manacles. The men began chanting. Once again they prostrated themselves as their master approached, gliding majestically past them, his intense green eyes focused on my bulging belly. My water abruptly broke as if by his silent command, and he grinned. "You have done well, Isabella. I did not have to chastise you. I am here to deliver my child, like a good father should." "His child? What about my husband's?" I moaned and thrashed as far as the manacles would allow, as the labor reached a crescendo. The man cooed and guided the first twin into the world, a bloody, naked boy. He cut the cord with a jeweled dagger, the rubies flashing red in the candlelight. He held him up high, turning to present the bawling, bloody infant to the adoring, bowing congregation. I screamed as I felt the second child stare in me, and deep down, I knew this was my husband's child. Tears streamed down my flushed cheeks as I realized I would die down here. A hooded man broke apart from the congregation, coming over to kneel beside me. What he said next shattered my whole world, my foundation for life itself. "Izzy, it's time. Push." My husband had been a part of this insidious plot all along. His blue eyes blazed with the light of a fanatic. "You bastard! You fucking animal!" He smirked at me, and he hissed. "You are the one that just birthed the bastard, my dear. Now come along. I'm waiting for my child. Not every day your wife gives birth to a god. My daughter has a great destiny. She will be her brother's handmaiden. He will be a god like his father, his wife, and the mother of his future children. Maybe you would live to see it. If you comply like a good wife, now push. Something inside me died. My life crumbled before my very eyes. I obeyed him as the pain intensified, locking eyes with him, my own blazing with fury, hatred. The baby girl slid out and my husband cut the cord with a similar jeweled knife. He went to join the monster holding the boy child and the congregation cheered. As they held the wailing baby simultaneously, I could feel myself losing blood. Black spots waltzed at the corner of my vision, threatening unconsciousness. A figure approached, the congregation too distracted by the burst to notice us. A beautiful face swam into my vision. She was hooded like the rest of them, but wisps of blonde hair surrounded her head like a halo, and intense blue eyes blazed into mine. She tied my umbilical cords and pulled off the afterbirth. She began unlocking the manacles. She silently led me out of there, up and out of the mausoleum, wrapping a similar black cloak around me. She stopped in the graveyard. Quick, you don't have much time. You will live through this, unlike the other countless mothers he had murdered. Murdered because they were not born with powers like your son. You see, he can sense the power. Your son carries it within himself. You must leave. You can always rescue your child in the future, but you must live to do that. She handed me a car key. Take the red Toyota parked by the gate. I began to flee, but I halted at the sound of her soft voice carried in the wind. Isabella. Take care of Arabella. If you want the twins back, you have a fight ahead of you. The cult is rich, powerful. Their tentacles stretch across the centuries and multiple continents. I ran. It began to rain again, but it wasn't rain. It was that disgusting semen. The sticky mess poured down on me as I located the red Toyota and I drove into the night, pondering my next move. My daughter was safe with Gary's mom. I would go there. I pulled into the driveway and ran up to the door, pounding frantically. She pulled me inside, ushering me in. She was a comforting presence with her gray hair pulled up in a bun and a pink bathrobe, shushing me as I babbled. She said we would talk over tea. Her slippered feet patted away into the kitchen as she went to make the tea. I went up the stairs to check on Arabella. The room smelled of lavender. I smiled as I leaned over the crib, my priceless daughter sleeping contently. My head bumped into the mobile, jostling it. I reached out to still the noise, but my hand froze in midair. The mobile consisted of tiny, jeweled daggers,